Pryde's Picks is spoiler heavy and full of crude language. I swear like a sailor, and Lockheed's no better. Consider yourself warned. Hey everyone, it's July 9th, and I'm here with this week's Pryde's Picks. Now, before I get started, I have to apologize. I've been gone for about a month and some change, and I had a lot of personal stuff going on. My dog is very sick, and she's hanging in there, but I am having trouble keeping my spirits up. So doing Pryde's Picks has kind of been put on the back burner, but I've missed you guys, and I'm so sorry. And we actually got Welcome to Tate's funded while I was gone, and I wanted to thank you all for that. And let's just get started. First up is DC's Injustice issue 7. Now this is Quinn versus the Canary. And Injustice has actually been really good because it's a way of doing an alternate verse of DC Comics and getting to do whatever the fuck you want. Well, Ollie knocked up Black Canary, and then Black Canary goes to his little bat cave, and she decides to mourn and mope and be a little bitch about it. And she runs into Harley Quinn there. And Harley and her decide to start fighting because they're both hurt, they're both angry. They fist fight, and then Black Canary stops to puke, and Harley Quinn's like, "Are you fucking pregnant? I can't punch a pregnant lady." Then they start commiserating on how apparently Harley went on like a little nun sabbatical at one point and had Joker's baby and didn't tell anybody, so that's weird. And then it turns around and Harley's like, "Yeah, but he's living with my sister now, and we're best friends." And then she offers to help Black Canary out. So this was some daytime TV drama bullshit, but overall Injustice is really good. I would say pick up the trade, but piss on this issue. Moving on to Batman Eternal issue 14. Now I wasn't even going to bring this issue up. I've been covering Batman Eternal every issue since the beginning, but this one pissed me off. And the reason it pissed me off is Gordon's in prison, and Gordon's all mopey emo bullshit right now, and Penguin's trying to take over the city and trying to crack down on Falcone. And Penguin references the Lion, this, like, criminal mastermind from back in the day that used to tell everyone there was a natural order to things and how there's a pecking order and everything else, and how he looked up to that, and that's why he believes that he should take Falcone's place. Cut to Jim Gordon in prison, and Jim Gordon decides that maybe he should step down and just stay in prison and get all mopey and emo because there's a natural order of things. He's quoting a fucking crime lord. Since when does Jim Gordon get all mopey and start quoting crime lords? Like, it just doesn't make sense. I feel like it's bullshit. And Lieutenant Bard actually does a lot of good, this new up-and-comer. But in the process, he has some shady tactics for doing his good. And Batman calls him out on it. And he's like, I can't win them all, motherfucker. I really liked Bard. And now I'm starting to question if I really like him or not. But Gordon's being a total pussy. And I'm going to say shit on the page where he quotes a crime lord, but other than that, pick up this book and wait for the trade. Moving on to Marvel, we have Nightcrawler issue 4. Now, Nightcrawler has busted his way out of heaven to come help the X-Men, and it looks kind of like this Buffy thing's happening where he might not be able to go back. And these Trimagas have attacked the school, and they keep attacking Kurt and his girlfriend Amanda, and then shit gets weird, and their adopted mother from way back in the day shows up, and she's trying to open this portal and create this world of chaos. And Kurt decides that they need to take her and put her in on the other side. Except that when he tries to, Amanda goes through, and then he gets stuck. And he can't go through. There's like a barrier. And it turns out once he's left heaven voluntarily, it won't let him back in. So there's your Joss Whedon moment. And Kurt becomes an emo, whiny little girl at the end. He's like, I've lost my heart. Now, I know he's all romantic and stuff, but that last page made me want to rip this book in half. Piss on it. Moving on to the Amazing X-Men issue 9. Now, this is issue 2 of 5 of the World War Wendigo series. And Wolverine shows up in Canada, and suddenly these Wendigos show up. And apparently they are like Sabretooth, but on 20 pounds of crack. They are almost unstoppable. And the X-Men show up and they start helping Wolverine. Turns out you become a Wendigo if you eat Canadian flesh on Canadian soil, at least so it says in this book. So for some reason this whole town has become a Wendigo. and it's spreading throughout Canada. They're trying to contain it. I have a feeling they're going to go the route of Supernatural, and it's going to be like a small fast food joint is serving people burgers to everybody, and then everybody, I don't know, I feel like I would troll people. Like, if I lived in Canada, I would, like, cut someone's finger off and feed it to somebody just to see them turn into a Wendigo, because I think it would be fun. And maybe somebody's just having a good time with the kind-hearted Canadian folks. In the end, Wolverine goes all Wendigo, so I don't know when he started eating people, but I can't wait to see what happens. Moving on to Spider-Man 2099 issue 1. Now, Miguel O'Hara has been dropped into our universe. He came to help out, and now he can't seem to get home. And he just decided to settle in and become a badass. He is cheating, won the lottery, and now has an awesome apartment. Room 2099. Subtle. And he has changed his name as to not be discovered to Mike O'Mara. He's like, I'm working at Alchemex, and I don't want somebody to Google this and, like, have it screw stuff up later in life. Somebody can make, like, a typo error and mix this up. So I don't know why this guy is being so careless. He's kind of being a bit of a douchebag. This guy named Totem shows up. This robot shows up, and he works for this company called Totem. And basically, he is there to keep the space-time continuum of sorts in balance, and having Miguel in our verse is screwing things up, so he tries to eliminate him. That part, seeing that guy go through and, like, come across random people and be like, you're obsolete, and shoots them, or comes across somebody and says, your son will help cure cancer, I'll let you live. That was really cool. The rest of the book was kind of crappy for me. I will still wait for the trade because I want to see how he's going to get home. Let's wrap up Marvel this week with Avengers issue 32, Original Sin. Now, Original Sin has been all over the place. I thought it was just about killing, like, who killed the Watcher. Suddenly, the Gauntlet shows up, and gems are exploding, and people are traveling through time, and I am lost as shit. But my boyfriend was determined to tell all of us on our podcast that it is a good book, and I picked it up and actually read it. And even though I was confused through the traveling of hurtling through space and time, I do get that this book is actually good. The Avengers book has been pretty good for the past handful of issues. I'd say about 5. So if you have been reading the Avengers or you haven't, you might want to pick it up a few issues back and read into it. The time gem is broken, and now the Avengers have been hurtling through, like, time. Except now it's down to just about 3 of them. And Captain America seems to be the only one that's sticking it out. And in the end, it looks like he might be the only one left. So I can't wait to see what the next issue turns up. I don't want to ruin this one for you. And at the same time, I don't understand everything that's going on. So I say pick it up and read it yourself. It is actually a good book. Now I have a bunch of indie comics. I decided just to pick up any number 1 or anything I saw that I haven't read before or read in a while and share it with you guys. First up is Archie Comics issue 657. Now, before you bitch that this is not a comic, I grew up on this shit. When we were little and poor as hell, my mom would take us to a used bookstore, and we would get 25-cent Archie Comics and take them home and read them over and over and over again, because that's all we had. And this book is exactly the same vibe as it was back in the day, and I realized something very important. These are horrible people. Archie is like this clumsy motherfucker that will do anything to get a girl to like him. Veronica is this princess that literally, like, goes on to the next big thing and is like, oh, fuck Archie. And why he looks up to her, I have no idea. Betty, being the girl next door, is a conniving bitch. And Jughead's like a fucking pothead. And I don't know how, as a kid, I could, like, idolize these people or want to be Betty. But man, these are the shittiest people you could put into a comic and then just draw them really colorful and pretty, and people read it. I can't believe, looking back at my childhood, I am scarred. So this book shit on my childhood. For the record, in the end, Veronica's guy she was lusting after, Biff, this big muscle jock, stereotype, he was gay. Spoiler alert. Let's move on to Dinomite Comics with Chastity issue 1. Now, this book is about this girl named Chastity, and she grew up as an athlete. Her mom was an athlete. Her mom was a well-known athlete, and her daughter's trying to follow in her footsteps. She's trying to be a gymnast. Her mom was an ice skater, and her mom is training her to get her into the Olympics. That's what she's there for. Chastity tears her ACL of some sort and ruins her chances, and her mom basically gets depressed and ignores her. So then Chastity, like, works really hard and tries to overcome her pain to try to get her mom's love back, and she fails again, and then her mom's just like, you're dead to me. So then she gets all emo and starts picking up like these vampire books. And she falls in love. They're a mix of like Anne Rice and Twilight. Like they're trashy like Twilight, but they're dark and broody like Anne Rice vampire books. And she becomes a groupie and then goes to meet the writer of the book series. And the writer turns out to be a real vampire and attacks the fuck out of her. And that's how the book ends. Now, the thing about this book that I liked, and the reason why I'm bringing it up at all, is this book takes place in the 80s. And I didn't really realize it at the time, except for at one point she said she was going to Walden Books to go to a book signing, and I was like, Walden Books isn't fucking around anymore. So I got to the back of the book and read where the author wrote that this book was supposed to be in the 80s and how he's embracing it. And I realized I would love to see something that kind of embraces my childhood and I can jump back and enjoy it. So despite the fact that this seems like a contrived, overdone idea, this book is quite charming. I would say read it on the shelf, and if you're a child of the 80s, you might find the same charm in it I did. Moving on to a publisher called Oni Press and a book called The Life Eater. This book has this gentleman who is basically in the Matrix. His life is just the same, monotonous, over and over and over, every single day, exactly the same way. And you're not sure if this is really happening or if it's just the monotony of day-to-day life. But every day he sees this girl, and every day he wants to talk to her on the bus, and every day he doesn't. And she always drops her handkerchief, and he always wants to pick it up and have this communication. He never does. And one day he actually does. And then the system freaks out, and it turns out he is in a matrix of sorts. And he kind of jumps, because of touching her, into another verse. And then they jump into another verse, and then suddenly he's in purgatory. This book is all over the place, but at the same time, it was kind of intriguing. I would say pick it up, read it on the shelf, but probably check out another indie book I'm about to review. Let's move on to Image Comics with a book called The Spread. Now, this gentleman here calls himself No. And he is fighting the Spread. And the Spread is like this kind of zombie-esque bloody mass of monsters that is just killing people all over. And then there's this woman carrying this thing, and these guys show up and kill her. And then she turns into the Spread, because anything that dies turns into the Spread. But the thing she was carrying to protect was a baby. And No comes across the baby and decides to save it and kill the guys that have kidnapped the baby. And he doesn't realize why the baby's so important. She's dying there, becoming Spread-ish, and she's like, the baby's important. And then the baby cries a tear, and it like kills all the Spread in the area around him. Like all of this like tentacle-y, visceral monster just dies because of these baby's tears. And then I was intrigued. So I'm not exactly sure where this book is going. It is gory, it is gruesome, it is interesting, and I'm going to say read it on the shelf. And if you like it, wait for the trade. I'm going to keep reading this book. The Spread, pick it up. Moving on to The Walking Dead issue 129. Now in this issue, young Carl has finally been given approval by his dad to go off and learn a trade. And he feels like a man, and he's really excited, and he's like, peace out, Negan, I'm out of here. And Rick decides to take him. Now, something in this book really bothered me, and apparently it didn't bother anybody else, but I am a child of a divorced family. Multiple marriages, multiple divorces, and he's been calling Andrea mom. And it didn't seem to bother anybody else on my podcast, but it annoyed the fuck out of me, because Lori wasn't a deadbeat mom. She was a good mom, at least in the books. And Rick is a good dad. Now, if Rick died, do you think Andrea's going to have some other guy shacking up with her and he should call that guy dad? No, it's bullshit. He should not be calling Andrea mom, and he should not be calling any new person anything else. He could call her Mama A, he could call her something different, but he has one mom, and she was a good mom, and I feel like he is not respecting his mom enough, like the image of her and keeping her alive in his heart by calling this new slut that's banging his dad mom. I don't care if she saved his life. I don't care if she's one of the strong ones. I don't give a shit. As a child of a divorced family, this insults me. It pisses me off. If you guys disagree, please leave comments below. Maybe you totally understand why he's calling her mom and it's been years and she earned it and what the fuck ever. I just don't see it. Other than that, the end of this book has Rick being kind of a bit of a dick to one of the guys that was a little bit distracted on his patrol. And when Rick turns into this dick, he reminds me a lot of Negan. So it would be cool to see Rick spin out of control and become a complete asshole and have to have somebody like Negan put his ass down. Or at least smack him around until he realizes why he's being such a douchebag. Walking Dead 129, not much happens. I would say wait for the trade. Let's wrap up this week with a book from Image Comics called Death Vigil, issue 1. Now, a lot of times with indie comics, the art isn't that great. And a lot of times with smaller known comics, the art on the cover is amazing, but the art inside is shit. Death Vigil is not that comic. Death Vigil has beautiful art on the outside, and the art continues throughout this book. Now, I don't understand how they plan on keeping this book going because it is so fucking beautiful. I don't understand how they're going to have the time to do it. But it's got this ethereal, painted look to it, and the story's a little convoluted at first, but they make like a double first issue just so you can really get the vibe of what's going on and feel like you're in it. And towards the end, you realize that people die, and when they die, sometimes they become part of this group, this Death Vigil, and they're fighting for souls against the demons that are escaping and trying to capture people. Except that the war is kind of imbalanced, and it looks like a lot of the good guys are dying right now. There's a girl on a first date that goes horribly wrong, and the book itself is really freaking charming. I fully enjoyed Death Vigil, and I hope you pick it up and enjoy it too. I would give it a buy it now. One last thing, please check out a web series that my buddy John Hernandez has painted and drawn himself. The writer is David Carr. It is called Tainted Love. You can go to taintedlovecomics.com and check out the first season of this web motion comic. It is completely free. If you're looking for an indie comic or something indie or something different, just something to sit at home for a few minutes and read and enjoy, check it out. It starts out as this like train wreck of a relationship, and it moves into something you never see coming. In the end, your mind is fucking blown. And there is a G.I. Joe reference that you might not catch, but if you do, leave it in the comments below and tell me why you are so awesome, and I will give you major geek cred. Because John says so far I'm the only one that's caught it. So get your asses over to taintedlovecomics.com and let me know if you can find it. And good night, everybody. Mwah.